Amazon Prime Video's snappy and exciting spy series Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a pleasant surprise during its first season, and now the streamer has opted to renew it for Season 2. Based on the film of the same name from 2005 starring Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, the series follows two secret agents who must pose as a married couple to complete dangerous missions for their mysterious employer. Donald Glover and Maya Erskine star as the eponymous couple, and their fascinating relationship grew throughout the first season's 8-episode run. Critics raved about the series, and the performances of Donald Glover and Maya Erskine were the highlight of each episode. Unlike the 2005 Mr. and Mrs. Smith film, which lacked an emotional core, the TV series flourished because it used all 8 episodes to expand the relationship between the agents. Another thing the series did well was hint at a larger world beyond the two main characters, and Season 1 was merely a glimpse into a broad narrative. The success of Season 1 has spurred a quick renewal for Season 2, and more Mr. and Mrs. Smith is coming soon to Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 2 latest news. A new cast member is courted to join Season 2. Donald Glover and Maya Erskine in John and Jane laughing together in Mr. and Mrs. Smith Episode 8. A few months after the first new cast member was announced, the latest news confirms that another star is poised to join Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 2. With Mark Adelstein set to lead Season 2 as John, it has now been announced that Yellow Jacket star Sophie Thatcher is in talks to play his counterpart, Jane. Though she hasn't officially signed on yet, it seems highly likely that Thatcher will assume the part. No other cast members are known yet, and the status of original stars Maya Erskine and Donald Glover is still up in the air. Amazon Prime Video has positioned itself as a juggernaut in the streaming game, and shows like Mr. and Mrs. Smith continue a hot year for the platform that has also hit big with Fallout. The show broke records when it premiered in early February 2024, and it took about 3 months for Prime Video to announce its renewal for Season 2. Since then, news has been rather scant, but with the series being recast, it's likely going to look very different from Season 1. Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 2 cast. Donald Glover and Maya Erskine might not return. As is the case with most Amazon Prime Video original series, the cast of Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 1 was a star-studded affair. The A-list ensemble was led by Donald Glover as John Smith, and he was perfectly cast opposite Maya Erskine as his fake wife Jane. Now, though the show has been renewed for a second season, word has come down that Erskine and Glover may not be reprising their roles as the titular fake couple. This opens the door for new stars to fill the roles, or it could allow guest stars to take center stage. It has been confirmed that Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 2 will cast new leads, but that doesn't mean Glover and Erskine can't appear in some capacity. Since there are many fake couples in the show's universe, it could simply shift to another pair while the original duo is still out there somewhere. Anora star Mark Adelstein has been cast in the male lead role, John, while Yellow Jacket standout Sophie Thatcher is in talks to play Jane. Pop star Billie Eilish was rumored to be in the running, but a deal ultimately fell through. Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 2 story. Did John and Jane survive Season 1? John, Donald Glover, looking over at Jane, Maya Erskine, while laying in bed in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. The ending of Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 1 was frustratingly ambiguous, but it also leaves the door wide open for more. Trapped in their home by the extremely high-risk Smiths, Parker Posey and Wagner Moura, John is severely wounded and Jane is left with only one bullet in her gun to take out the two trained killers. Though the mid-credit scene revealed that some sort of struggle ensued, it isn't clear which pair of Smiths was victorious. Mr. and Mrs. Smith Season 2 could answer that question or could leave things forever uncertain. With the news that the show is going to be recast, there's a chance that audiences may never find out what happened to John and Jane. However, the show could simply be focused on another couple, which doesn't necessarily exclude the original pair from returning somehow. The series has hinted at a much larger universe, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith could take an anthology approach with each new season following a new couple.